So good afternoon and welcome everyone. We are thrilled to be welcoming you to lessons from the land Indigenous Food Sovereignty as Climate Action today. My name is Alicia Roberge. I'm the instructional leader for the Sustainability Office at the TDSB. I'm joined today by my colleagues Jen Vetter and Chris Metropolis, and my colleagues from the Ontario Institute for Studies at the University of Toronto, who we work with in close partnership in developing PD on environment and climate change education, Dr. Hilary Inwood and Sarah Erk. So for our webinar today, I'd like to share a land acknowledgement, and then we will hear from our speakers today, who I'm very honored to have with us. Please join me as a settler on these lands in acknowledgement of our gratitude for the ability to be gathered here today on this land with the TDSB land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. In preparation for this webinar, I have learned so much from the UIEC and from the individuals we're going to hear from today, Tanya Senk, Tori Gervais, and Laurie Lebrec. I just wanted to highlight a quote from Robin Wall Kimmer, who is a Potawatomi botanist and author, and director of the Center of Native Peoples and the Environment in the State University of New York College of Environment and Science and Forestry. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and also Service Berry, this quote is prominent and stuck with me. All flourishing is mutual. All it takes is a decision to do one thing. It is an act of restoration and resistance. All it takes is a shift of the mind, a heart made willing. To me, all flourishing is mutual is so important. And I feel that in preparation for this is something that I couldn't have been in the place I am now without the help from the three people that you're going to be hearing from today. So to begin with, I would like to introduce Tori Gervais, and my colleague of mine who I've been working with quite a bit, and she's going to be taking us or getting the session for us.
I am going to, hello everybody, looking forward to introducing myself here as we get started, but I'm going to pass it over to Tanya for now to start with this slide so that we can get started with this topic.
I want to say bonjour, Anit, and say tanche. Welcome, everybody. Wonderful to see some familiar faces, and welcome to those that are new. And thank you to everyone who has worked together to put this webinar together. All of us together here in a circle. So I'll start by introducing myself. Gagiskepamahchakwew, Kandasuankwe Indishnakas. My name is Tanya Senk. I'm a member of Cowessess First Nation, which is Treaty 4 in the Qu'Appelle Valley in Saskatchewan, and also to acknowledge the three sister nations, people of the Buffalo, which is Cree, Métis, and Saulteaux. I'm recently retired from the Toronto District School Board as the System Superintendent for Indigenous Education and the board lead, as well as being a former principal of Wandering Spirit Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School, which is a K-12 Indigenous focus school within the Toronto District School Board. I am currently the Director of Indigenous Initiatives and Indigenous House at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. So that's how I introduce myself, and I'd like to say that we are all incredibly happy and proud about the Urban Indigenous Education Centre, the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Program. And so this was founded in 2019, and it was really a redress to the residential school system. And so I worked alongside many others, including the Indigenous Education Office of the Ministry of Education, which supported this initiative, and as well working alongside the Elders Council It is the first of its kind in a publicly funded school board across the province. And currently within the TDSB, we have it at 3 sites. So it is housed out of the Urban Indigenous Education Centre and within the same building as Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School. So it is at Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School and the 2 Native Learning Centers, one downtown and one east. We've hired Indigenous food sovereignty chefs and instructors at each of these sites so that we can have so that the students can have access to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit knowledge of food systems and have food prepare based on a holistic understanding of sustainability. I deliberately wrote holistic like there is whole because it does also encompass the aspects of who we are, which is the mind, the body, the spirit, and the heart, and also the restoration of land-based cultural practices and protection of Indigenous food systems. So the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Program is supported throughout, and it centers Indigenous ways of knowing and being and doing. Next slide, please. I also attribute it to Elder Pauline Shirt, who gave me my name, the late Elder Pauline Shirt, Kapapamahchakwew, Kendasawin and Dishnakaz. She was the founder of Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School in the 70s, started it in her living room. She's from Saddle Lake, Alberta, and she passed away just over a year ago. And this is an image that was painted by her from the artist Kent Monkman. She was incredibly instrumental and continues to be so to this very day. And the name Wandering Spirit in Cree is Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School. And so I also want to acknowledge her as well. Next slide. I also want to acknowledge Elder Dr. Duke Redbird, who is on the Elders Council at the Urban Indigenous Education Centre, who I have the privilege of working with very closely every day. And the story that I'm going to start off with is about picking berries and how the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Program came to be, and that it is rooted in the 13 moons and the 4 seasons, as well as the 7 sacred teachings, acknowledging those matrilineal lines, Mother Earth, and those matrilineal lines of the waterways. And it is premised on all of our relations and the interconnectedness, because everything is alive, everything is interconnected. And so we say all our relations. And in Cree, Minopimatswin, living the good life, walking with those 7 sacred teachings. So there's a picture of Duke here out on his boat, and we had some strawberries and blueberries that day. So Mawisawin. Next slide. So I'm going to start with this story. I begin by sharing a story of my experience picking berries in the Capel Valley, a traditional gathering that took place every summer during the strawberry and raspberry moon, the heartberry moon. Elder Pauline Shirt once said to me, "You remind me of blueberries," and I wondered what she meant. Teachings are passed on through social organizations grounded in the knowledge and stories of Indigenous women's communities. Economy, translated into Cree, means how we take care of each other, how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of the land. And this refers to the relational approach to community, sustenance, and well-being that is connected to the land. The matriarchs in my family took care of each other, have had to be strong and resourceful, and to work together in relation to community and the land in order to survive. I said my Kokum had 16 children. 12 lived to adulthood, 4 passed on, and they lived in a 28-foot by 28-foot, a log cabin built out of railroad ties with no electricity and no running water. She was the midwife as well, and also understood the medicines, as did my family. And these teachings have also been taught down through generations. I was taught that this concept of working together and taking care of one another does not refer to money nor to material gain, but to rather how we maintain peace and harmony and balance and being in the world, and how we are to be in good relationship with all living things. And we do this by taking care and attention to Mother Earth, the individual, the family, the community, and in turn, the nation. I lived with my kokum, my aunties, and my uncles and cousins during my informative years. We would pack up for a number of days and go berry picking in the Capel Valley during berry picking season. Many stories and lots of laughter were shared, and we would later return home with bushels of berries that were immediately brought into the kitchen and placed on the table to be preserved and canned, made into pies, syrup, jams, jellies, and also baked into bannock. Many stories and lots of laughter were shared around that kitchen table while preparing the berries in different ways, with family and friends gathered around. They knew how to take care of themselves and others in the community, and they knew and held the knowledge of the land and their ancestors. They shared stories which were carried down from one generation to the next. I would listen as a very young child to these old and new stories and their laughter. At times, the prepared berries were sold and traded for other goods, and they were a source of income for the family. There were hard times. They knew how to take care of each other during the most difficult times. Berries emphasize kinship and relationality to the land, each other, and all of our relations. As I said, I dedicate the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Program, and that's how the vision started. And I dedicate it to my mother, Olive Bellumer, my kokum, Eugenia Bellumer, and my greatest teachers and matriarchs, including Elder Pauline Shirt. And I remember the berry-stained hands that I used to hold. So that is how this came to be. How many years ago now? 6 years ago? Almost 7. And the vision for that was carried on through that. And so when thinking this through and working with the ministry and the Toronto District School Board, the vision and the purpose was very much that this was a redress to the Indian residential school system. And it started off specifically at Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School through the Urban Indigenous Education Centre. And we were clear that there would be curriculum connections and that teachers could work alongside the Indigenous Food Sovereignty chef and instructor and understand that this was about reclaiming our food systems. Although food security and Indigenous food sovereignty are close, they are distinct, and this created this synergy for many opportunities for students to engage in the program. What also informed the program was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action, which in Action 43 states very specifically that the United Nations Declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples also is the framework for reconciliation moving forward. Next. So I want to also acknowledge the Dish with One Spoon Wampum, which also is a framework and an agreement between the Anishinaabe Nations and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy on how to share the land. And it is a metaphor that speaks to how we share the resources of the land, take only what we need, and we don't contaminate the bowl or the plate, and we come to it with a spoon and not knives and forks, so that we are in peace. And it speaks to sustainability. Next slide. At the Urban Indigenous Education, we have 7 canopies of the Urban Indigenous Education Centre. So we looked at how does the program support students? So it supports students in the classroom. It also provides co-op opportunities. There's opportunities for professional learning that we do through the Urban Indigenous Education Centre that students also engage in. Community engagement. We often have community feasts. Through partnerships, we're working with the University of Toronto and also through curriculum development and programming by bundling courses together. And then we are currently working on a research project with the University of Toronto, looking at the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Program. And as I said, reconciliation really undergirds mostly of what we're doing. Next slide. So the 4 key principles that guide the present-day food sovereignty movement in Indigenous communities is what I'm saying around sacred or divine, sovereignty, that it is participatory, and self-determined. And here we have an image of the buffalo. The buffalo is our teacher, one of our greatest educators. And we think of the buffalo as sustenance, and the buffalo provides everything. Next slide. So before I go on to introduce Lori Lebrecq, how am I doing for time?
And maybe if you can wrap up in 2 minutes, Tanya?
Sure, I can do that. So I just wanted to speak further around the contexts that around food policies and systems of public schooling and across Canada also must acknowledge that the history and ongoing impact of colonization on Indigenous food sovereignty systems is a tool of colonization and oppression. And this is an example of how we are reclaiming our Indigenous food systems. We have 3 amazing people in these programs, one yet soon to be hired. And we continue to look at the policies as well so that we can source our foods and also grow them. And that's an amazing actual segue into introducing Lori Lebrecq, who is an amazing educator who has done so much to bring all of this together in the very amazing and incredible work that Lori Lebrecq does for the students and beyond at Kapapamahchakwew. So over to you, Lori.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. And it's actually, like you said, such a lovely segue. So, Ani, bonjour everyone. My name is Lori Lebrecq. Nani boy ishkode bishkiki kwendishna cause, makwan dodem, figuranto and dunjaba, dokis and dao. So, hi, my name is Lori Lebrecq. And like Tanya said, I am the land-based learning teacher at Kapapamahchakwew Wandering Spirit School. And just like Tanya said, stating your positionality and just talking about your relationships are so important in framing the work that we do. So I just have some photos here of my family. My dad is from Dokis First Nation. So I have some photos of my dad and I, and my grandpa. This is my grandpa up in the top left corner, and my grandpa's family in the center black and white photo, as well as myself and my cousin Jimmy at our powwow at Dokis on our traditional powwow grounds. And then my mom's side of the family is Irish Canadian, and talking about how food was used as a tool of colonization. I think no one knows better than the Irish and Indigenous people of Canada. So I have this, I'm proud to have an anti-colonial history on both sides of my family. And food sovereignty is something that has always been incredibly important to me. And I can't wait to share some of the cool work that I get to do. Next slide, please. So like I said, I am the land-based learning teacher at Wandering Spirit School. I teach K-8 students. And I've centered my whole program around Indigenous food sovereignty. The three main ways that I do that are traditional foodways. So we do a lot of animal processing. We intentionally pick our crops that we grow, what I will talk a little bit more about later. And we try to use as many traditional growing practices as we can. We do a lot of work with cyclical systems. So one example in the garden is students are cultivating, harvesting, saving seeds, composting, and then we start all over again. And we do a lot of work with animal life cycles. And then seasonal learning. My whole program is based on the Anishinaabe 13 moon system. And I have a nice photo here of a turtle with the scoots representing all of the 13 moons and then all of the days in each moon month. Next slide, please. So some of the work that like I said, I focus all my work on food sovereignty. And so I've tried to take a whole year down and talk about some of the most exciting things I get to do. So when we come back to school, we're at the very end of Minoman Gizis of Wild Rice Moon. And so I have some photos here of wild rice drying in my gym. I also teach phys ed, so it's definitely a multi-use space. I have some photos of Minoman in my hand, a student parching the wild rice. And then if you're able to play the video, it's a student dancing on the wild rice to separate the chaff from the actual wild rice itself. And so, like I said, students are often doing similar things year to year. I feel so blessed and lucky that I teach K-8 and I get the same students time after time, because each year they get different responsibilities and they get to take away different pieces of meaning from it. And Minoman is one of the Anishinabe's sacred foods. So it's a really interesting way to talk about culture and connecting students to culture through building relationships with the land. Next slide. Some of the other interesting things we get to do are tanning hide. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of my students scraping buffalo hide. So students from K-8 are able to participate in this. Students in this class, so at this time, I think they were grade 4 and 5, were actually the ones to build the frame that we use to do the scraping. And then on the left-hand side, you can see some students and I brain tanning hide. I think I have the coolest job in the world. Not many other places can I say that can people say that they have to go buy brains to do the work that they do. So I feel very grateful for that. And working with bison is especially important when talking about climate change and climate action. Like Tanya said, bison were crucial and still are crucial to Indigenous people, and they're the original caretakers of the land. Their manure would fertilize the land, their hooves tilled the soil, and just like bison and how settlers tried to kill the bison to kill us, for lack of better words. There is a resurgence of bison, and I'm so grateful to say that the work I do is an active resurgence as well. So we are still working on this hide. It's actually in a freezer in my school. Next slide, please. One of the main things that we do is working in our garden. So I now have 3 separate gardens in 3 separate areas. And like I said, we do full circle food systems. So students are planting the seeds, they're caring for the garden. We have 2 types of composting systems. We have 2 large tumble composts, which you can see at the top right corner. And then we also have vermicomposting, so worm bins. Students love to take on this initiative, and it's a great way in talking about climate change and climate action to reduce food waste. Students are a lot more aware of the food that they're eating or not eating when they are the ones growing it, and they are the ones having to visually see everything that is not eaten. like I also said in my introduction, we do really intentional crop choices. So I have a very unique experience working with Indigenous students in an urban space. We're serving students all the way from like Nunavut, Northwest Territories, all the way down to South and Central America. So making sure that all students are represented, things like tomatoes and potatoes and onions for some students, but also really focusing on things like berries. We have a whole meet and get to go on a berry garden where we have raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, Saskatoon berries, and strawberries. And just making sure that all of my students are or all of our students are represented in the garden. It's really, really great, especially as a teacher, that students are really able to regulate or practice self-regulation in the garden. Students who often struggle in classrooms really get to thrive in this space. Next slide, please. Like I said, I'm really trying to condense a whole year into 15 minutes. So one of our favorite things that we get to do together is Maple Moon. So each year we do different activities related to maple syrup. And this year we actually have something even more exciting planned thanks to Tori. But in this photo, you can see us making maple taffy. And it's kind of tricky to see, but in this photo on the left-hand side, we actually did a maple taste test. So students tested maple water, maple sugar, fake maple syrup, and then real maple syrup side by side. And that was a real highlight for kiddos, especially last year when we made the taffy. So one thing that I put a little bit more time into was our work with fish throughout the year and talking about the full life cycle of the salmon that students get to see. So every year we take students up to Etienne Brule Park and we watch salmon swim up the Humber to make their migration to spawn. So on the left-hand side, you can see some students looking at the river. Some years are very successful, like this year, and some years, like last year, you're just looking at a whole bunch of dead, stinky fish, but students love it anyways. And every year we also work with the OFAH, the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, and we work with their project called Bring Back the Salmon. So we actually had our salmon eggs delivered today. This is a picture from a previous year, but students watch salmon grow from an egg to a fry, and they get to watch them each step of the way. And then we release them back in the river, and I'll show you that photo later. Next slide. The more exciting thing that we do with salmon, if you ask me, is gutting and smoking the salmon. So on the left-hand side, we weren't able to procure salmon last year, so this is not salmon, but normally we do. Students learn how to gut and how to gut and fillet fish from a very young age. The younger students are using butter knives to just scale the fish, and then older students are given the responsibility of actually gutting them with lots of guidance and help, of course. And it's really neat. I work very closely with our Anishinaabe language teacher, Marie Gaudette, and I'm so grateful to do that. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. But she and I have created a system where older students are helping younger students, and it's really lovely to see that collaboration. So in this photo, I specifically chose this one because you have a then grade 6 student teaching a then grade 1 student. And so it's lovely. In the center photo, you can see our smoker. This is just on, like, if you were to look to the left of the photo, there's a giant parking lot, and then past that row of houses is Danforth. So like I said, we work in a really urban space. And so doing this work is an act of land back and resistance. Having a smoker right in the heart of like Toronto's East End, I think is a pretty radical thing. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you can see students with all of the different waste, like quote unquote waste, in the bucket, and students are digging a hole to bury the fish waste so that we can build a Three Sisters mound on top of it as a fertilizer. So students are seeing full circle systems. Next slide, please. If you can play the video as well. Some other things that we do in regards to salmon are activities like this salmon escape room that I created last year. Students looked at different environmental impacts for salmon, so things like invasive species, water pollution, overfishing, and they worked together to solve problems and escape this little escape room that I created. So in the right-hand picture, one of the activities, for example, was students had to find different materials throughout the classroom to create a water filter, and students filtered dirty, like polluted water to raise a key that would unlock their next clue. And I think in this photo, they're using black lights to do the overfishing problem. But it's really, really fun and a totally different way to do land-based learning. Next slide. So this is the last slide I have for today. This is us releasing our fry back into the river. And I think it's just a perfect way to talk about how land-based learning can be used as an active climate action. Students developing a love for the land and a relationship with the land is the only way to make a difference. And I'm so grateful to work with all of these amazing students and my lovely coworkers. And I have the amazing honor to introduce Tori Gervais. Tori is the instructional leader at the UIEC and has long been an outdoor educator. And I've learned so much from her, and I am very excited to hear what she has to say next.
William Miigwech, Lori, thank you. It's a lovely introduction. My Deliwas Nil Tori Gervais, Naga Wolastigwe Nil. My name's Tori Gervais. I'm a member of the Wolastic First Nation in what's now known as New Brunswick. You may have heard of the St. John River before, so we call it the Wolastic River, and we're people of that beautiful river. And I'm really thankful to be working on these lands here and having the opportunity to work as an instructional leader and really feel like I'm carrying on the work of my ancestors and my family and carrying on all these teachings and presence and doing this work. I have been working the last 3 years as an instructional leader with the TDSB. So a lot of professional learning with teachers from K to 12 and administrators. And I have some theory to share with you a little bit from some Indigenous academic scholarship to support all of this, amazing things that Lori and also, extraordinary work that Tanya has done in bringing all of these things to life. I love that we started with all of the doing, because that is really at the core of this land-based learning that we're talking about, the making, whether that's policy or program development or the teaching and working with foods themselves. So just a couple notes about land-based education and Indigenous land-based education. And what we're talking about is education that's on the land and about the land and from the land. It's not just going outside, and although that's very important at times, but there's many different ways that we can be nurturing and our relationship to the land and learning from the land in community. So just drawing some attention to that. Next slide, please. Very quickly, so I know we're a little bit short on time, and some of these slides maybe you'll be able to see later or to follow up with some of the links that I'm sharing there. There's a First Peoples Principles of Learning that is outlined in a really elaborate way in the Weiwa book. Indigenous pedagogies. And I just wanted to reinforce the one point there, not only that learning is holistic and reflective and experiential, and that relational piece being, you heard that come through in Lori and Tanya's sharing, the teachings that they're sharing, but the sense of place and just being connected to specific place and how that place is then networked out and in relation to other places and people and all living beings is really at the core of Indigenous, not just pedagogy, but also epistemology. So how we come to know our knowledge. So next slide. I'm going to go through pretty quick. There's some notes here elaborating on what we mean by the concept of place, and again, that it's relationship-based and local but connected. Next slide. There's, many benefits to this, and I'm sure Lori, and Tanya could also speak to this and what you see rise up in students as they engage in this kind of learning and really generative knowledge from the land. The cultural relevance really can bring a strong sense of pride, but also not just hearing about, what it means, but also again with that doing and with the hands and that experience of being outside in some cases and engaging with relating to the weather in across all of the moons is an important part of that conversation too. Next slide. I missed a slide, so you can skip to the next one there. This is just to circle back to some of what Tanya was talking about, also with the connections to UNDRIP and the TRC. So many of you here hopefully are familiar with the calls to action and are engaging in work around the calls to action. And we do a lot of work around education with that. And in doing some of the work in trying to bring this to life for non-Indigenous teachers in this urban environment, and the research I did on reconciliation, I came across this quote in the TRC report that reminds us that the Indigenous conceptions of reconciliation extend beyond people to the natural world, and so reconciling with the earth itself is part of reconciliation. So this work benefits Indigenous students, and that's who we're working with directly, but also working with non-Indigenous students, and all the work that we can do around reconciling our relationship to the earth. And on that note, next slide, through Robin Wall Kimmerer's work, was reminded about the power and the efficacy of just noticing, and this idea that just paying attention is a form of reciprocity. And I'm again sure Lori would support this, that really all of the work that we're doing with students in land-based education really begins with this noticing. So what are we seeing around us? What are we curious about? And that's really how this teaching can come from the land. But essentially, first we need to notice. And make those connections and then build that curiosity from there. So I really center that in the work that I'm doing. I once created an outdoor education land-based course, an interdisciplinary course at a high school I was working at. And at the core of the course was really being out on the land, having students curious, noticing, being curious, and then that became, any kind of research project or work that they were doing to demonstrate their learning was really driven in that way. So other things that we can do. I'm going to skip through these parts, these couple of slides here, just in the interest of time. Really the idea here is just we're thinking about our relationship, and another way that we can also broaden that thinking about not just our relationship to the land, but also our responsibility to the land. So when it comes to, conversations around land back or jurisdiction, or Indigenous people, taking up issue with how their lands are being treated or mistreated and used, and who's making those decisions, it really, at its core, is about responsibility. So what we're doing is showing up and being responsible to the land through those kinds of actions also. Next slide. And, Laura, I'm sure you're aware of this, and also Tanya mentioned the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And just to be specific, Article 14 does talk about the Indigenous peoples having the right to establish and control our own educational systems and providing education in ways that are appropriate for our cultural methods of teaching and learning, and especially children. Next slide. So just to bring it back to some of the other work that I've been able to participate in and lead as a member of the Urban Indigenous Education Centre, I've been doing some coaching and facilitation work with teachers at one of our other sites. So it's a secondary site, Native Learning Center East it's called, and noticed a couple of, big maples just outside the door and got to wondering why we couldn't just tap those. I had the opportunity of growing up in a sugar bush, and I just thought this would be an awesome opportunity. So started small, and from Richard Wagamies, I've been reminded about the importance of starting with the smallest circles. And really here was just creating opportunities for students to connect with the trees, notice the trees, pay gratitude to the trees, again, forms of reciprocity. We brought out some of our ceremonial medicines, and students knew right away what to do with that, and that was really heartening. And they were able to connect with the trees, not just as a product and with the sap flowing through them, but also in a spiritual way. And that's a really important part of not just identity, but also upholding those responsibilities. Next slide. I was really thrilled when after tapping these trees, and I was just there for that one day with them during that particular maple moon, that they became quite determined to boil down the sap. So again, like Lori was mentioning with the smoking you were doing here, students really were the ones who motivated us as some in our roles as leaders to find a way for them to do this. And we have some already things in place with Toronto Fire that allow us to have sacred fires. So those permits were made available that way. We got some of this equipment, and then they just spend a whole rainy day outside taking turns tending the fire and boiling down the sap. And that was just a really powerful learning for me. Again, just to, reinforce the idea that we're all, co-learning and learning from students as they learn from us and learning from the land. And like Lori said, excited to be working on developing a month-long overnight program for this year's Maple Moon season, and looking forward to hosting Indigenous students on the land and having some opportunities to learn and to make. And if you could just skip to the next slide, which should be the last one. Oh, I guess I didn't. I entered those a little bit late, but I was just going to sort of come full circle, actually, in a way, as Tanya was sharing her memories of being a child and picking berries, and what that meant. And similar for me, I had an opportunity to grow up in a sugar bush, and even though this wasn't on our land, and just acknowledging we were on, historical Tyendinaga treaty land that we've been on for about 40 years now, and stewarding that land, but learning these customs and traditions and ceremonies around making maple syrup and how influential and important that's been to me. And I wanted to just finish by drawing attention to a traditional Anishinaabe story that Leanne Bittasamose Simpson shares in her book, The Gift is in the Making, which is just an extraordinary, really eloquent, beautiful telling of the importance of maple syrup, and that maple syrup itself isn't the gift. It's the making of the maple syrup that is the gift, and the community coming together in love that makes it possible. And I think that's true for, all those amazing things that Lori's doing with students. And they're so lucky, Lori, and you're so lucky, and all the things that Tanya has made possible through her leadership at the Urban Indigenous Education Centre also. So I'll leave it there. I know we want to make sure there's time for Q&A, and happy to answer any questions. Wiliwan, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, Lori, and Tori. I think we need another webinar to give time to the wonderful work you all do. We have a few minutes for questions before we leave. I was just wondering if there was anything in the chat that anyone wanted to ask.
There's nothing in the chat just yet, but we have Jessica with her hand raised.
Okay, great.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, my children are here too, so if they come in, that's why. Say, oh yeah, thank you for that presentation. Okay, so basically at my school, in like the Jane and Finch community, we basically, like about 3 years ago, we got a major grant from TD Friends of the Environment, and it had a very strong, it was basically an Indigenous narrative. How can we learn more about Indigenous knowledge? And we had Elder Philip Cote come in and work at our school, but we also build a very big like garden and with an Indigenous lens built into the garden, like through it, building a garden that will support like the community, both the human and the more than human community. And so we have like a range of species like bearberry, evergreen, Joe Pye, echinacea. We have like tons of plants, and like, to be honest, myself and my colleague, we led the grant and we lead the eco team, but we're both settlers, and our knowledge is limited in that area, which is why I'm asking about, like, do you do outreach? Do you think, sorry, just one second. Do you do outreach, or do you do you offer support? Could you offer support for school? Because I think that it would be really beneficial for us. Thanks, that's it.
I could answer that. We do, I mean, the Urban Indigenous Education Centre is here. Most of what our focus on the presentation has been on the work we're doing directly with Indigenous students. And the other aspect of the work that we do here is support all the schools across the TDSB. We have a few different projects in place. We have some system professional learning that we offer throughout the year, especially in the spring. And hopefully your school will maybe someday be part of what we call the Bedobin Project, which is working with over the course of a number of years. We'll hopefully have every school come in for guidance on how to engage in this work in a responsible way as non-Indigenous educators. But beyond that, you can reach out to us. There's a form on our website where you can always reach out there. And there's also partners on our partnership list who can also assist with gardening specifically. So a few different avenues there. Lots of resources on our website too.
Thank you, Tori. Is there anyone else that would like to?
I have a question.
Okay.
Tori and Lori, I know you're both very supportive of teachers, and Tanya, of course, teachers' professional learning. What recommendations would you give to teachers who are settlers on this land, just as a starting point in terms of land-based learning? I mean, I feel that as a settler, I shouldn't be leading land-based learning, but I do help my students learn about it by directing them to sources that I feel are important voices. Leanne Simpson's work is one of those. So what other recommendations do you have for teachers who'd like to start on this journey to learn more about land-based education?
Did you have something you want to add, Lori?
Sure. I think the number one most important thing that you can do is build relationships, making meaningful connections with people who are knowledgeable. Even for myself, like when we do things like lying hominy corn, I have no knowledge on that. And so building relationships with those people who are very experienced in those ways, I think is one of the best ways to go about things. Like you don't have to be the expert, but there are so many people who are.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to extend on that, the more you can learn and listen and read books and attend events and things like that to support that relationship building, the more grounded you'll be as you approach the work. We also really emphasize grounding any actions that educators are choosing to take in being aware of and knowing, responsibilities to treaties, responsibilities to TRC calls to action and UNDRIP, and recognizing our own positionality in all of the work that we do as a starting point before deciding on what action we might take. So those are just a couple of things. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate too, Hillary, when you brought that up around positionality and moving beyond being in good relationship to being in right relationship with Indigenous peoples. So that relationship and relational accountability is really important when you endeavor to embark on that journey.
Thank you. And Monica, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm curious actually, Tanya and all other. I'm so proud of you, what you guys have done. And I know that work is not enough to support Indigenous students and community and, bringing awareness to non-settler, non-Indigenous communities like us who have made this place our home. But I'm curious, would it be possible? That's my question, that, if we have, because I always look for some, further questions and insights on Urban Indigenous, their website. But I'm wondering would it be possible to have, specific contact information of elder, depending upon, or specific other contact information to support us, settler teachers, for like learning center wise, so we can quickly, connect with them. So just to, expedite the support system, or confusion we are having?
I can begin to answer that. So depending on where you're a teacher, the Toronto District School Board connect with the UIEC, and we have a partnership list and an elders council. And also that elders and knowledge keepers carriers have different gifts and offering gifts in those specific ways. It doesn't necessarily always have to be an elder or a knowledge keeper and or carrier. It could be somebody who's Indigenous and has experience and understanding and knowledge in the area of Indigenous land-based education. So through the TDSB, we do vet very closely in terms of through our partnership list and through the Elders Council. And depending on whatever institution you're working and operating in, I think that they all have their structural pieces in place in terms of how you go about engaging with an elder or knowledge keeper through Indigenous protocols that are akin to their own nations and ways of being and doing. So, and there aren't a lot of elders and knowledge keepers and carriers out there as well. So I would say from a TDSB point of view, even though I'm not there anymore, it's been 1 week out, that you do connect with the Urban Indigenous Education Centre to find out. And then OISE has its own systems in place as well.
Thank you. And as an
I
educator,
hope that helps. That's a very big answer.
no, it does. And as an educator in TDSB, I've had so much learning from the UIC, attending the different PDs, but also, like you say, I've had to do a lot of learning on my own as well, a lot of reading, and but yeah, always getting advised and building those relationships at the UIC. So saying that, I would like to extend. Sorry, Tori, we were trying to show your picture.
No, it's all good. It would make sense now.
We weren't able to get it up. I apologize. But I
Okay.
would like to really extend our gratitude to the UIC, Tanya, Lori, and Tori for your support and collaboration with the Sustainability Office and OISE. And without you, we wouldn't have been able to do this webinar. And we work on a wide range of initiatives with the UIEC and climate change education initiatives. And so thank you very much for all of that. I wish we had more time we need another webinar, I think. I'd like to, just before we leave, just share with you a couple of webinars that will be coming up. So TDSB OISE webinar, Waste Not Want Not, Reduce Before Recycling. And we've got an OISE Scan webinar as well, Enacting Slow Pedagogy and Indigenous Approaches to Learning and Sustainability Teaching. So on February 24th and January 20th. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it and for your time and everything. Thank you.